Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and I work with a lot of individuals with attachment wounds. Today, I wanted to go over a topic that I feel a lot of individuals, I don't see it much or it's not discussed as much, and I feel like it's important as well. And that is signs that an anxious attached individual is changing and healing, right? And a lot of individuals who are with an anxious attached partner, sometimes they're afraid to confront their partner because they're afraid of how their partner is going to react. And so that's a lot of why a lot of individuals do not prompt and help their partner to change. Instead, what ends up happening, which is a trigger for an anxious individual, is the partner is afraid to tell their partner what's bothering them because they're afraid of their anxious partner's reaction. So unfortunately, they avoid them. Now, before we get into anxious attached and how they change, I wanted to bring up an example of something that I notice. Individuals who are anxiously attached, often they don't feel prompted to change because they're often with a partner who is also insecurely attached. So subconsciously, an anxious individual feels like because their partner also has issues, they don't recognize where their own issue is emotionally. And they don't recognize they need to change. So this is more obvious when the anxious partner is with a secure partner. Because a secure individual, which a lot of anxious individuals don't understand, but I see this in my practice. I have worked with couples where one partner is anxious and one partner is secure, and it is suffocating for a secure partner. Now, it is not the anxious individual's fault. It comes from trauma. However, a lot of anxious individuals do not have to, they don't experience that because a lot of times their partner is an avoidant. Or sometimes their partners may have a personality disorder, unfortunately. And so an anxious individual, they're very overly triggered. And so they can't see what they look like when their triggers are not as heightened. But regardless, anxious individuals, of course, they need to heal as well. And it creates more opportunity for love, and it makes the relationship more calm and secure and genuine. And so this is very important, okay? So the very first sign that an anxious attached individual is healing and changing is admits to their portion, their section, the variables they added of what went wrong in a disagreement in a moment of miscommunication. So basically, they take responsibility and accountability. Now, avoidant individuals, anxious individuals, the reason why they struggle to do this is because they feel like if they admit what they've done wrong subconsciously, they gave up their power in the perspective and the moment, and they're afraid that this is now the opportunity for their partner to blame them and walk all over them, and they'll never be heard and they'll never get their needs met. So it's very scary to admit that maybe they did make a mistake, because that means then their partner will never notice their mistake, the partner's mistake, and then their partner won't meet their needs. That's what they're afraid of. But by challenging those fears and still accepting, you know what, I made a mistake too, that can really help the relationship. So if you are anxiously attached and you want to heal, this is also something to think about. Trying to pay attention to what went wrong, either in my previous relationship or the argument we had. What is something I could have done? Not what is something my partner could have done. Because a lot of times when I work with couples, the anxious partner is typically, that's probably a better word. They're typically the one who, when we're in a couple session, this is what my partner's doing wrong, right? They almost are like coming with a list. And it's a little harder for them to hear what they're doing wrong. It's harder. Whereas avoidant individuals, they're so used to hearing what they're doing wrong, they're a little bit more open to it, but sometimes they shut down. But it's usually a rapport issue, not necessarily the conversation issue. But with anxious individuals, it's a little bit more challenging to admit what they did wrong, at least in a moment of disagreement, because they really want their partner to get better. And so they're thinking, if I am focusing on myself, maybe my partner won't get better. That's their fear. I hope that made sense. It doesn't mean that they're less likely to change. Avoidant individuals struggle with changing overall, but avoidant individuals are a little bit better with accountability comparison from what I've noticed, and I could be wrong. I understand that that's a little hard for some people to hear, but I'm just being honest with you. The next one is They admit what they really want in an open, transparent, and honest way instead of a direct, almost attack on the other person. Anxious individuals, they can be put, I want to say the defensive, but I'm not sure if that's the right word. It's like they feel very hurt when they get hurt. And because of that, they become very spiky is kind of the way I want to describe it. Like they feel like it's almost like because they got so hurt, that validates them to be very harsh towards their partner. They think it's okay, right? And you can see that with a lot of anxious individuals. Not every anxious individual is like this. So please, I'm not saying you guys are all like this if you're anxious. But I am saying sometimes what happens is you subconsciously give yourself an excuse to disrespect or, say something about a certain population or a certain somebody because they hurt you. But if you're healing, typically you can detach from that. You can understand that they hurt you, but you can still also remain respectful and say, you know what? You promised me that you would text me more often, and I don't see a difference in that. I really like texting. Is there a reason that this is hard for you? Because I'm willing to work with you, but I want us to both find a compromise, find a happy medium, wherever it is. That type of communication is harder for anxious individuals when they're triggered. But even in a triggering moment, if you're seeing that your partner who's anxious is becoming more open and transparent and honest when they're communicating, that is a big sign that your partner is changing. And it does make the relationship less volatile. It's actually very calming. If you're somebody who's with an anxious partner, you really want to see this, right? And so this is a big sign. So it's really good, right? The next one is you're going to see your partner become less triggered around texting, phone calls, or moments of absence between both of you. That doesn't mean that they don't expect you to respect them. If you are the partner of an anxious person, I want to be honest with you. A lot of times, anxious individuals, they're more triggered if they're not getting their needs met. So it's a sign that if they're becoming increasingly triggered, it's possible that you're not meeting their needs. So just a little tip and something that can really help. If you lean in and meet their needs, their triggers are going to decrease. A lot of people think, which I can understand, right? If you're with an anxious individual, you're afraid that if I give and I keep giving, they're not going to see what I'm doing and they're just going to continue to be triggered and pick on a lot of things. That's not always the case. If you can reassure them and help them around texting and phone calls and be more appropriate and be more consistent, actually they become less triggered. So that's a sign that they're healing, but it's probably also a sign that you're treating them right. So if you're not seeing that, maybe change your strategy a little bit. Anyways, you're noticing that they're less triggered around texting, phone calls, and moments of absence because they trust you. They believe, and it's likely because you've earned it, right? So that's, if you're the partner, that's a good thing. Give yourself a pat on the back. Moments of absence. Maybe you're on a work trip and you've told them, hey, I'm going to be really busy. I'm going to be in and out of conferences. I don't know if I'll be able to text, but after work or when I'm driving back to the hotel, I'll give you a phone call and I'll text you when I get back. Something like that. But maybe before when you said that, they didn't trust you as much, or they still got really anxious and they still blew up your phone a little bit. But now you're seeing they're not doing that as much. That's a sign that you guys are making progress together. And that's a really nice one. And the last one, this one I love. And yes, this is possible for anxious attached individuals, is they're more forgiving towards you. A lot of times anxious individuals, I'll be honest, you guys are good at holding grudges. If you're an anxious person, you're good at that. But I know it comes from trauma. However, if you're being more forgiving towards your partner and you're being a little bit more lenient towards some of their mistakes, doesn't have to be a mistake, but you hear me, that is a sign that you're healing, right? You understand that everybody makes mistakes and everybody's trying their best. And I really like when I see anxious individuals do this because you guys deserve to be free. Sometimes you got a lot of noise in your head and you got to set free from that noise. I see that with anxious individuals. When I'm working with them, anxious, you guys are just anxious, right? Sitting in session, maybe you're really upset about something, you're really getting worked up over something. And and probably the partner as well, can see that maybe it's not. It is a big deal, absolutely, and I'm not dismissing you, but maybe it's not worth being so upset about it and thinking about it so much because honestly, there are other ways around it, and sometimes it does get better. You're afraid that it's not going to get better. Sometimes it does, and if it doesn't, the situation might be that maybe you're trying your very best and your partner's just not good enough. And maybe that's a point for you to have a conversation with your partner. Or sometimes you may have to leave. But overall, you can heal too, and it really is fulfilling and rewarding, okay? So this is a sign for anxious individuals that they're changing. And if you're the partner of an anxious individual and you see this, go ahead and tell them. Tell them that you're proud of them and you appreciate it, okay? Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, and I'll see you in the next one.